What is it that truly anchors a valuable employee to a firm? For decades, the dominant answer and strategy has been pretty straightforward. Cultivate skills that are only valuable within your company. The logic is that if an employee's expertise isn't transferable, they can't be poached. But what if that's an incomplete picture? Today, we're going to delve into a significant 2012 paper from the Academy of Management Review by Campbell, Coff, and Kryscynski, which challenges this very idea and offers a much more sophisticated way to think about talent and competitive advantage.
We're going to proceed by following the paper's own logical structure. First, we'll look at the theoretical conversation the authors are entering. We'll then deconstruct the traditional argument about firm-specific skills. From there, we'll examine the three critical conditions where the authors argue that logic breaks down. Then, we will explore their new, more comprehensive framework. And finally, we'll summarize the paper's contribution and the research agenda it sets out.
All right, so to really grasp the contribution of this paper, we first need to understand the theoretical problem it's designed to solve. Any major theoretical work begins by identifying a gap or a tension in existing thought. So let's establish what the authors were responding to.
Right here, in their own words, the authors set up their core argument. They target a foundational belief in strategic management, that the key to retaining talent lies in making them experts in things unique to your firm. The assumption has always been that if their skills don't transfer, they simply can't leave. The purpose of this paper, then, is to first identify the limits of that logic and then to build a more robust theory in its place. So this is the central gap they identified. For a very long time, the theory on human capital advantage has leaned heavily on this one idea of firm specificity. It's been treated as the primary isolating mechanism, that is, the main barrier that keeps valuable employees from moving to a competitor. The authors argue this is an oversimplification, and that we're missing crucial pieces of the puzzle.
So, before presenting their own model, the authors carefully deconstruct the argument they intend to critique. Let's walk through this traditional logic that has long connected an employee's skill set to a firm's sustained advantage.
Now, this entire argument is built on a classic distinction, first articulated by Becker, between two fundamental types of human capital. On one side, you have firm-specific human capital. Think knowledge of a company's proprietary software or its unique culture. On the other side, you have general human capital. These are skills like project management or expertise in a common programming language that are valuable to many employers. The traditional logic, as you can see, follows this very linear four-step path. It begins when workers develop skills that are idiosyncratic to their firm. The next step is that because these skills have little value to other companies, their exchange value on the open labor market is low. This, in turn, constrains the workers' mobility. It reduces their incentive to leave. And the conclusion? The firm can retain this valuable employee and appropriate the value they create, leading to a sustained competitive advantage.
And it's here that the paper makes its first major theoretical move. The authors contend that this tidy four-step logic only really works under a specific set of unstated assumptions. They identify what they call three boundary conditions, that is, situations where this entire chain of reasoning ceases to apply. They identify precisely three of these conditions. The presence of any one of them is enough to undermine the traditional logic that connects skill specificity to sustained advantage. Let's examine the first one. The first boundary condition is what they call heterogeneous value. The traditional model tends to view skills in isolation, but in reality, employees have a whole portfolio of skills, both general and specific. Now, imagine a rival firm has better complementary assets, maybe superior technology or stronger brand. That rival might value an employee's general skills so highly that they can make an offer that completely overshadows the binding effect of the employee's firm-specific skills. In that case, the employee is no longer locked in. The second condition involves imperfect information. You see, the traditional logic assumes that the labor market can accurately assess and price an employee's skills based on their specificity. But the authors argue that real labor markets are characterized by information asymmetries. It's often difficult for outside firms to know exactly what an employee's worth. This causes the market's valuation, the exchange value, to become decoupled from the actual specificity of the skills. This matrix, based on the paper's Figure 1, illustrates this decoupling perfectly. Traditional theory really only accounts for two of these four boxes, but look at the other two possibilities that emerge. You can have a scenario with overvalued firm-specific human capital, which would actually make an employee more mobile. Or you could have undervalued general human capital, which might inadvertently keep an employee in place. Both of these outcomes directly contradict the standard theory. Finally,
The third boundary condition is that the traditional logic is entirely demand-sided. It focuses only on what other firms are willing to pay for an employee's skills. It completely ignores the worker's own willingness to move, which the authors call supply-side mobility constraints. These are all the personal factors that influence the decision to stay or leave, independent of salary. Things like the financial and psychological costs of moving, family ties to a location, or even legal constraints like a non-compete clause.
So after identifying these critical limitations in the existing view, the authors then move to their second major contribution, building a new, more comprehensive theoretical framework. And this framework is designed specifically to integrate the factors that were previously ignored. And here it is, the core of their new model. It's a 2 by 2 by 2 framework that combines the three key factors we've just discussed. You have skill specificity, high or low. Then you have demand-side constraints and supply-side constraints, also categorized as high or low. Instead of a simple binary outcome, this framework generates 8 distinct scenarios, each with a different implication for competitive advantage.
Now let's explore one of the most counterintuitive insights from this new model. Take a look at cell 2. This represents a situation where a firm can actually achieve a sustained advantage from an employee with primarily general human capital, exactly the kind of employee that traditional theories said was impossible to retain. How is this possible? Well, it happens when demand-side constraints are high, meaning the market undervalues their skills, and supply-side constraints are also high, meaning the employee has strong personal reasons for not wanting to leave. They become immobile, but not because of their skills. The paper formalizes this insight with its first major proposition, which you see here. This is a powerful theoretical claim because it completely inverts the conventional wisdom. It suggests that the isolating mechanism isn't necessarily the skill itself, but rather a specific combination of market imperfections and individual-level constraints. Now, let's consider the opposite scenario, which we find in cell 7. Here, we see a situation where a firm gains no sustainable advantage from an employee with highly firm-specific skills. This is the very scenario that was supposed to be the bedrock of human capital advantage. It occurs when both demand and supply-side constraints are low. That is, the market is, for some reason, willing to overpay for those skills, and the employee is highly motivated to seek a new position. And this leads directly to their second major proposition. It articulates the precise conditions under which the traditional logic is at its weakest. The implication is very clear. Simply possessing firm-specific human capital is insufficient for advantage if market and personal conditions align to favor mobility. So, with all that in mind, what is the paper's ultimate contribution? Let's summarize its main theoretical impact and the new questions it raises for researchers. The paper's primary contribution is that it shifts the theoretical focus. It moves the conversation beyond a simple reliance on skill specificity and toward a more complete understanding of mobility constraints. It provides a more robust framework, it identifies the specific conditions under which general skills can be a source of advantage, and it helps unpack the microfoundations, meaning how the choices and circumstances of individual employees aggregate up to create firm-level outcomes. By advancing this new theory, the authors also lay out a clear agenda for future research. They call for scholars to develop more detailed models of labor market imperfections, to empirically test the framework's propositions with real-world data, and crucially, to develop better measures that can disentangle the constructs of skill specificity and market exchange value. And the paper leaves us with this critical question, which has implications for both theory and practice. If the real source of advantage is not just about the type of skills an employee has, but about the broader set of constraints on their mobility, how does that change how firms should manage their talent? It suggests that strategic human resource management must evolve, moving beyond just skill development toward a more sophisticated understanding of the market and non-market forces that truly determine where valuable people choose to build their careers.